the words I speak today be guided from on high and be filled with the love that I feel in my heart right now. I'm just finishing a hard candy because my throat was scratchy. And the water is here. Morning, everybody. Lovely. Those lovely faces. New faces, familiar faces, faces we haven't seen in a long time. So everybody's welcome. And welcome to those of you watching later or now. So the theme this month that we all take from throughout the Centers for Spiritual Living is Pulled by Vision. And I love that because some of you may have read the newsletter or the blog, but many years ago, when I was a prayer practitioner student before licensing, Michael Beckwith taught us, Reverend Dr. Michael Beckwith, taught us this idea that pain pushes until vision pulls. And that made a lot of sense to me. And that has been with me for decades, where I really understand that when I'm in the midst of something, until I get a vision, if you will, and I'm not talking about this grandiose vision of, a whole new world, but a vision of what I need and want, some idea of what I need and want that I can clearly articulate, that's not pushing against what I don't want. Until I get that, I'm going to be stuck in this situation where I am. It creates a bridge for me to pull up out of what it is that's happening. And we often get stuck in this cycle of pain and suffering, whatever it is, little things, big things, but we will not be able to get out of it. So one of the things that I've noticed when I ask someone, well then, what is it you want, when they're complaining? And I have a friend that I walk dogs with, a new friend that lives in the neighborhood, just moved into the neighborhood. And she is in a negative situation right now and talks about it a lot. And I listen and we kind of process things. But at one point the other evening, and I said, okay, can we talk about what you want? Yeah, but she did this. I said, well, but what do you want? Well, I don't want this to keep happening. I mean, it just, and every time was another version of, I don't want this. So it was this little bit of coaching that finally moved this wonderful person into talking about what perhaps she wanted. And so we embellished it. Now every walk I say, oh, and wouldn't it be nice if you had your own garden? And wouldn't it be nice if... And we went on a walk to, I don't know if any of you have been to Draper Preserve, but there's something that's called the Heart Tree. And some of you may have seen that. It's a big, beautiful tree, and everybody puts heart rocks around it. You do little prayers on the rocks if you want. And so I took her to the heart tree, and she had been finding little rocks that were in the shape of a heart. And I said, aha. So we went to the heart tree, and I said, here's what you do when you're at the heart tree. She said, well, I've never done anything like that before. And I said, well, try it. You'll like it. And she did, and she stood there and affirmed what it was that she wanted. And I echoed it, and we talked about it. And something has shifted in her, because now she'll see things. She says, I saw the most amazing thing. I'd really like to have something like that, or I could really do this. So it was wonderful that the vision has sort of lifted her up just a bit, her vibration or her frequency up, so she could see possibility. Several years ago, I'd been kind of sedentary, which is unusual for me, and hadn't been doing a lot of my yoga, I hadn't been doing exercises, and I'd just been sitting at work in front of the computer and sitting at home in front of the computer. And I developed this, what I thought was a bad hip, and it was excruciating pain. And every time I stepped funny, I get this lightning bolt of pain through me, and I said, this is not me, I don't do pain. And and it kind of freaked me out, and this went on for quite a while. and I was having trouble hiking. I couldn't do anything. So I did some meditation and said, okay, I have to do something about this. Let me see if I can heal it mind over matter. Well, I wasn't successful because the pain was too extreme. But I kept getting in meditation, it's okay to seek outside help. Like, duh. So I did, and was guided to a sports medicine doc, an orthopedist, whatever they're called, orthopod, we call them. But anyway, and because I was afraid it was my hip, he said, no, it's not your hip. It's this thing called piriformis syndrome. I don't know if you've ever had it. And it's the muscle that gets, and the nerve and all that stuff. And it was, so he prescribed physical therapy, and I went to physical therapy, and I met this wonderful, very highly skilled young woman who gave me all the exercises, and it wasn't just in the hip area, it was, whole body. But then she kept asking me, well, you need to be clear about what you want. I said, I don't want this pain anymore. And so I was doing the same thing. And, well, what would that be like? Well, I'd be able to walk without pain, and every time I'd say it, it was pretty funny. And I finally went, oh, I want to feel strong and flexible and go out on hikes and be pain-free. And so that was my bridge to it, and I had the vision of it, but I had to work through treat and move your feet. Have you heard us say that before? Pray and move your feet, or move your hip in this case. I had to do the exercises. I had to keep the idea of what I wanted to do and be and how I knew I really was at the core of my being. And I had to keep that in the forefront instead of collapsing into the pain. And it took several months for it to finally be dissolved, if you will. And that was a direct experience of this idea that once I knew what I wanted and could articulate it in a positive, uplifting vision of possibility, because I knew it was possible, and once I tapped into that, it sort of raised my frequency, and I was able to do what I needed to do and get through it. And it was very impressive, and I thought about that again this morning when I was thinking, do I have an example of this? Because I like to have examples. And I went, aha, the piriformis episode. So one of the other teachers that a lot of folks have listened to is Abraham Hicks. And one of the beauties that they taught too was you find out what you want by virtue of knowing what you don't want, right? Which is exactly what happened. I don't want the pain. I don't want to be limited in hiking. I don't want to not be able to go out in the garden and work because I was in too much pain. So knowing what you don't want, will inspire the knowledge of what you want. But you have to learn to speak it in a way that's not pushing against what you don't want. Does that make sense? When you keep mentioning what you don't want, you're actually staying in that vibration. Very powerful lesson. So sometimes to envision, for example, if you are in pain, to envision radiant well-being. Anybody have that problem? Like when you have a toothache, can you really imagine not having a toothache? And so you really, sometimes you need outside help, sometimes you need prayer, sometimes, what you really need is spiritual practice inside and out. And sometimes that is help with others. And it is meditation, and it is prayer, and it is contemplation. And it is reminding yourself of who you really are, that you have this powerful creative ability that lives within you, and you just need to tap into it. But we don't remember that when we're in pain. So again, sometimes we need a little help with that. Excuse me. Is that smoke that's in your eyes or smoke that's in your throat? Is there a song about that? No. Sorry. So prayer and spiritual practice. And when you get to this place of what I call a real vision, again, I'm not talking about grandiose, it can be, but I'm not talking about these grandiose visions of, changing the world. And again, it can be, but it's not necessarily. What happens is it becomes, or what you're tapping into is both an inner and an outer vision. So the power of vision, well, let me just say this, pain's greatest gift, and many of you, pain and suffering's greatest gift is what? A higher realization. Will push you to say enough is enough. I need something different. right? Anyone experience that? Nodding. I see lots of nodding. That's good. So the power of vision, this inner and outer vision, and vision itself is liberating. It's liberating in many, many ways and on many, many levels. So the first bit of visioning is within, this idea of what we call involution. Involution, which is prior to or precedes evolution. So involution is this idea of getting in touch with that prototype or that seed, that God's idea that's within me about who I really am. Michael Beckwith calls it the prototype inherent within, or who you are. Evolution, on the other hand, is the byproduct of the involution, of how you express. So basically, a seed, a maple tree seed, has everything it needs in that little seed. We use that analogy a lot, or the metaphor a lot. Everything that's needed is in the seed. You don't need to add, subtract, or anything. It knows what to do. And then the evolution is when it becomes all that it was meant to be. So in this idea of the inner vision first is getting in touch with and being reminded of, no, wait a minute. I'm a divine being, I'm creative, I'm a child of God. And as Michael Beckwith in this book, Spiritual Liberation, that we've been talking about, or that we're in a class with, that Minot's going to mention too in the announcements later, is he calls it spiritual adulthood. And I'm like, oh, I like the child, you know. But there's a level of spiritual maturity that will come too. So this idea, this inner vision, is very, very important, and it needs to be first, I believe, is to get back in touch with this core wisdom within you, this intelligence. And there is a spiritual prototype, like the maple tree seed, that has everything you need, everything. And as many of the teachers will remind us, that spiritual evolution, spiritual growth, spiritual liberation, if you will, is a process of elimination, not adding unto. Meaning that you peel away things that get in the way of the expression of who you really are. You peel it away, old beliefs, you mentioned new truths. You peel away things that have been in your way, that have limited you, and so on. And you begin to allow, it's like you cleaning the windows. Somebody cleaned my windows at my house the other day. Whoa, it's like everything sparkles and it looks like a new view. And I didn't think they were that dirty, but, you know, whatever. So it's that idea, you're kind of cleaning the windows of your psyche or of your soul, and you can see more clearly, and then you can blossom, right? Letting in the sun will grow you when you let in more light, I guess is what I'm trying to say. God's vision for your life, and I use the word God because that's what I do. But that vision for your life, God sees us as we are. Isn't there a Rumi quote that if you could only see yourself as God sees you, you'd be not blown away? And I'm sure that wasn't the language then, but you'd be absolutely whatever. I can't remember what the word is, what the language of the poem or the saying was. And when you touch into that, so much starts happening. So much starts happening. You don't even need to have an idea of what you want necessarily, because it will guide you to being a fuller expression of what's there within you, needing to get out, if you will, letting it out to play, letting it out to express. So your vision is first the greater ideal of you. I think that's vital. Go within first, always. That's why we say pray, then move your feet. Treat, then move your feet. Do the inner work first. And then the greater idea of your life, what it is you want in your outer expression, will come much more easily. First of all, because you're guided to it. And then when you practice this visioning idea, and it's something that it's a meditation practice that we teach here, even how to do the visioning, and it's really about opening to the higher idea for your life. And when you do that, what happens is the universe kicks in, right? The creative forces. It's like this tornado almost, manageable, mind you. Well, not always. Actually, it can lift you up and kind of catapult you to something new. But it's this idea that it kicks in what is it that providence moves to? When you make a decision, providence moves to. I'm really mixing up the different quotes and things, so please forgive me. I'm afraid to listen to this afterwards. Like, oh my word. But you get the idea, right? Yeah, okay, good. Phew. So this idea, what I call the real vision, or the highest vision, and that's what we practice, tapping into that highest vision for my life, involves both that inner recognition and that inner frequency that you allow to move out into your body, into your being, into all of your expressions, into your words, your thoughts, your actions. So you see what you want, right? I want to be well, I want to go hiking, I want to play in my garden, and I want to feel strong and vital and flexible and, all these wonderful things. So you see what you want and you experience what I call an inner standing. Understanding, only it's an inner standing of the highest idea of you and the creative power inherent within you. Folks, we're magnificent creators. We're absolutely very, very, very powerful because we have the creative force of the universe living within us, waiting for us to express it and focus. So when we focus it towards something we want, can't help it not happen. Just can't help it unless you get in the way and stop it. Actually, sometimes that doesn't even work. Sometimes it just happens anyway. Contrary to everything you've done, to the contrary. So Scripture has said, where there is no vision, the people perish, and that's in Proverbs. And they've defined it different ways. They're talking a little bit more about prophecy. But one analysis of it is to remind us that vision gives value and meaning to our very existence. If we want our lives to have significance, then each of us needs to take hold of a vision and pursue it. And it could just be a vision of parenting, a vision of collecting seeds and distributing seeds. It could be just a vision of living really well, being a good neighbor, being radiantly healthy and hiking. Hiking is a big one for me. And many, many years ago, a couple of decades ago actually, I used to come up here and speak prior to there being a minister. And I would stay at Reverends Bob and Barbara Grabowski's house. And Bob would take me out hiking or snowshoeing. And he's 10, 20 years older than me, I think, 15 or 20 years older than I am. And I don't know exactly. And I remember way back setting an intention, because he sort of wore me out hiking out there. And I remember setting an intention way back then and had this vision. I said, I will be hiking and snowshoeing well into my whatever age it was that I set. And it's now, and it's even in the future. And that intention took hold. And I think that's what helped when I had to go through the real discomfort of physical therapy. It was not fun, but it was rewarding because the vision was pulling me to get back to who I knew I was and what I knew I could do, and the people I wanted to do it with, and the mountains I needed to explore, all of this stuff. And so it was very, very important to me. So when we set these intentions way back, it kind of creates a little vision, right? And it kind of pulls you, even though we get off track sometimes. So I'm always grateful for Reverend Bob Grabowski for creating that wonderful intention. If only I could still hike with him. That would be awesome. So your vision will do a couple of things. It will uplift you to see beyond your limitations or to see into possibilities. It will educate you on what's possible and what's available. Okay, tapping in, allowing yourself to open up, and I never even thought about that. Just like my friend who I walk in the evenings with, I hadn't thought about I could have this or I could do that, or those kind of things. It empowers you with what you need to take action, both inner empowerment, but also provides resources. The universe is an amazing, almost like a mail order system. We don't like to think of it that way, but it will then generate what you need, all the resources you need to take each step to realize this vision of what you want. And then it will support you by unleashing the creative forces of the universe. So this almost last part I want to talk about is the power of your voice. we know, we get to hear it all the time, but I'm talking not just about singing in this magnificent voice that's sitting at the piano right here next to me, but this idea of speaking about your vision, speaking from your vision, speaking authentically when you are aware of who you are and how powerful you are. And when you speak those words, or you're actually speaking the word, things happen. What is it? I'll get it mixed again. When E.F. Hutton speaks, everybody listens? Is that sort of correct? So when you're coming from this authentic place, this place of the real you, if you will, when you've tapped into that energy and that frequency, when you speak, the universe listens and responds according to what you're speaking. Very, very powerful. That's why affirmations are very powerful. But you got to feel them. There has to be the feeling, the frequency, the vibration, the understanding of what you're saying and how powerful it is. And why it's powerful is because you are divine and you know it. You are divine and you know it. So when you speak, let's see, Dr. Michael Beckwith said, when authenticity itself speaks through our words, thinks through our thoughts, walks through our feet, serves through our hands, and loves through our hearts, our lives have become real. Love that. Just love that. So the title of this talk included the word victory. And I liked the word victory because it started with a V. Vision, voice, and victory. That was the main thing. But I used to read a lot of Joel Osteen, or I'd watch his televangelical TV ministry, and he used the word victorious a lot, and it just sort of had an energy, and I really liked it. So this idea that, and I use the word victory like mastery, so you have victory over your conditions, right? And that's where that liberation comes from. So aligning your thoughts and your actions and your voice with your inner and outer vision assures you victory over condition. Do you believe me? No, it's good. It's true. So your vision and your voice together, when you've aligned that up together, generate that frequency of wholeness and of integrity and empowered creativity and divinity. And it is naturally magnetic to that which you want. Naturally magnetic. Do these things happen overnight? You get in touch with the vision, and is it instant? No, you might have to go to physical therapy, right? Or whatever it is. But it provides like a divine escalator, that while you're still having to do the exercises, you're moving along. You're moving along, and it's pretty magical, actually. So I call it the magnetic and magical pull of vision, is that blessing for your willingness. There's the key. You have to be willing to shift. You have to be willing to change your consciousness, because if you don't, you might make a change, but you'll slip right back. So you want to actually make that adjustment within you on several more degrees of understanding who you really are. That would be a shift in consciousness. Several more degrees of understanding how powerfully creative you are. Several more degrees of love in your heart. Several more degrees of light and wisdom that you allow to come through you. Several more degrees of spiritual practice. Many more degrees of spiritual practice. That's my recommendation. So, I think that's just about it. So let me close with this wonderful reading I found from Dr. Ernest Holmes, our founder. Good thing we have a concordance. You know, like the Bible has a concordance, and you look up words, and then you can find matching passages and stuff in the Science of Mind text, and so that was really helpful. Okay, so this is from Ernest Holmes. He says, "You've been left alone to discover your real nature, that as an individual you may consciously unite with the law of life and the presence of good. Just keep right on knocking at the doorway of your consciousness until every no becomes a yes, every negation an affirmation, every fear a faith. You cannot fail if you remain steadfast. Finally, the fetters of bondage will drop from you. You'll walk out of your self-imposed prison only to discover that the door was never really locked and the windows were not actually barred. You were bound merely by chains of unbelief. So let's take a moment, and we're going to just do a little heart breathing and a little mini meditation, visioning, and then we'll close with prayer. If you are comfortable doing so, to breathe with your imagination or your attention going into your heart, the breath coming into your heart and exhaling from your heart. You don't need to change your breathing, just your attention. And what that does is setting the intention to open your heart to fully receive any insights and messages from your inner wisdom, any visions that may come about where you want to be, or more importantly, who you really are. Let there be an opening into the quiet that lies beneath the chaos, where you find the peace you did not think possible and see what shimmers within the storm. From John O'Donohue. So with your breath, open your entire being and ask a question of yourself. What would victory look like for me in a particular situation or in general? What would a vision of a higher way of being for me, little or big, what would that look like or feel like? What is the highest idea or vision that God has for me? What is the highest vision of who I am? How can I use my voice to express who I am more fully? How can I use my voice to move further along into the realm of possibilities and victory over conditions? What is mine to do, and what is God's to do? And the last closing comments. Ignorance stays with us until the day of enlightenment, until our vision toward the Spirit broadens and casts out the image of a no longer useful littleness. What we now experience, we may cease experiencing if we have the will and the imagination to set our vision in an opposite direction and hold it there. It is the office of the imagination to set the vision. It is the will to hold it in place until the creative genius of the inner life transforms the image of limitation and transmutes it into liberty under law. And knowing that as I speak those words, I speak the word recognizing that there is a divine presence right here and right now that sparks in the heart of each and every one hearing these words, presently here, or on live stream, or anywhere for that matter. And so I just affirm that there is a responsive, loving, benevolent universe, a benevolent presence and intelligence, a creative power that works on our behalf, answering prayers, providing resources, uplifting, comforting, healing, providing for, supporting, anything and everything that's needed. It is provided before we even know we need it in most cases. So don't be afraid to ask. And please affirm that you are a beautiful, divine child moving into spiritual adulthood in this very moment. So we are blessed. I am blessed. You are blessed. And together, we are absolutely loved beyond measure. And so it is. Amen.